all the Azure services that we are going to cover in next 10 days or 15 days or whatever it is. Okay. So the Azure services that we are going to cover is, let me write it down here as well. Class 2. We'll put it as Azure class 2. So we already seen about subscriptions. What is a subscription? And we have seen about tenant. We have seen about resource group. And along with that, the services that we are going to discuss about is, and everything as a practical, like the way that how we seen in AWS, like discussing the theory about a service and doing a practical about a service. So we will see about virtual machines in Azure, which is equivalent to EC2 service in AWS, which is equal to EC2 service in AWS. And we will see about virtual network, which is equal to VPC in AWS. And NSG, which is equal to security group in AWS. And as you know that whenever we talk about VPC in AWS also, and what I'll try to do is, whenever I'm explaining any of the service in Azure, I will try to recap the AWS service as well, so that people who already know about AWS, so they can correlate to this particular service. If not, if people are new to cloud, they can get some idea on AWS as well, like what is about that particular service in AWS. And there is a service called Azure Bastion in Azure. We will also discuss about that particular service. And we also discuss about storages in Azure. We will also discuss about storages in Azure. And if you remember, or if people are not aware of AWS, so we have different storage services in all different clouds. It can be GCP, it can be AWS, or it can be Azure, whatever it is. And in AWS, we discussed about EBS, S3, EFS, so different storage services, right? So in Azure also, we have different storage services, like disks is equivalent to EBS, Elastic Block Store. And there is a blob storage, which is equivalent to S3 in AWS. And we will discuss about file storage, which is equivalent to EFS in AWS. Understood? So people who are not aware AWS, don't bother about it. So whenever I'm trying to explain a particular service in Azure, I'll try to give some background on AWS. If you can able to understand, that is fine. If you're not able to understand, don't need to worry. So you'll get at least some theoretical knowledge on it. Okay. So people who already have some knowledge on AWS, people who attended our previous sessions, either my session or Madhu's session, so they can easily correlate. So that is the reason I'll try to discuss on that particular AWS service when I'm explaining the Azure service. And if not, don't bother about it. You'll get some idea on AWS as well. Later on, you can pursue AWS course as well. So after that, we have a service called Backup Center in Azure. In AWS, we do not have any equivalent service. I think we have the backup part in the EBS itself in AWS. So we will discuss about that backup center service in Azure. Okay. And then see whatever the services that I'm writing on the board, everything that we will do the practical as well. It's not just theory, background on AWS, and then discussing on Azure, and then doing practical in the Azure portal. And little bit about IAM we will discuss. It's same like IAM in AWS and IAM in Azure. And then we will discuss about Azure Alerts, which is equivalent to CloudWatch in AWS. Okay. In Azure, there is a concept called Azure Alerts, which is equivalent to CloudWatch in AWS. Okay, let me read some message. So Lifecycle Manager is a backup center here. I can't pronounce your name. Gaulo something is there. Okay. So here we call it as a backup center to schedule the backups. We do not have Lifecycle Manager. For instance, in AWS, we have the Lifecycle Manager. Okay. So if you already know it, just fine. That's fine. So I'm just explaining about people who are not about. So Gaulo, I think whether you got my point or not, I'm not sure. I'm telling you that is in AWS. I'm talking about Azure. Okay. We do not have any lifecycle manager in Azure. We'll call it as a backup center. So lifecycle manager comes under EBS in AWS. Clear? And then using of Azure Alerts, so we'll see how to monitor a CPU utilization or something in Azure, which is purely equivalent to the CloudWatch, and some SNS is also involved in it. We call it as action group. Action group. In AWS, we call it as SNS. So because of knowing multiple names, like in different cloud platforms, it will be easy for you whenever you are attending an interview. So to talk about something on multi-cloud, so you can easily use this terminologies and you can talk. So that is the reason I was just trying to write both the names. So action group is nothing but SNS and SNS in AWS. And then later on, we'll discuss about Azure DNS, which is the service called Route 53 in AWS. Service called Azure DNS. In AWS, we will call it as a Route 53. So you know what is Route 53. So if you don't know what is a Route 53, we will see some background of it, because the background concept of any of the service in AWS and Azure is same. The only difference is while we are configuring, the console style might be different and the options might be different. We will purchase the domain, we will add the domain, and we'll do it. And after that, we will talk about load balancers in Azure. So we have different load balancers like Azure load balancer. Azure load balancer means is something like network load balancer in Azure, sorry, in AWS. Okay. And we will discuss about that load balancers. And then we will also discuss about, there is another load balancer, which is application. There is an application gateway load balancer. There is an application gateway load balancer, which is equivalent to application load balancer in AWS. Which is equivalent to application load balancer in AWS. So we will do that practical as well. And then after that application gateway load balancer, we will see that Azure database, how to create it. Azure database for MySQL. We'll create Azure database for MySQL. So let me write it down here as well. So this is something like something like RDS MySQL in AWS. And after that, we also see that VNet peering, which is equivalent to VPC peering in AWS. Okay. So these are all the services that we are going to cover. And after this, we will move to the DevOps basics. Like DevOps basics means, yeah. So we will give you some overview of, if you don't know DevOps, so who just enroll for Azure, so they can leave after this. And a DevOps basics kind of Terraform. What is a Terraform? If you already enrolled from Madhu's course, if you already completed the DevOps, that's fine. You can leave from after Azure. So people who don't know about the DevOps, and if they wanted to know the introduction of the DevOps, so they can just get some knowledge on what is a Terraform and what is a Jenkins and how to deploy Terraform templates using Jenkins. So this is what they'll see. Okay, so with respect to the Azure, so those are the services that we are going to cover. And we are ending with just giving some introduction of DevOps. And then later on, people who wants to enroll the DevOps course, so they can enroll. Okay, so this is the content on Azure. So if time permits, so I'll try to add, I'm not sure, but if I can cover any of the Azure service for in your case, so I'll try to add this, but these are the mandatory services that we are going to cover. Are you all clear, guys, what we are going to cover or what we are learning? Yes or no, please? So people who are already continuing along with the AWS, I think they would be, I think they are good, right? Satish and others. Because all the AWS services that you already seen when we discussed. Satish, Tarun, a few people who already, Srikanth, Deepthi, who already joining this from last 1.5 month. Okay. So these are the services that we are going to cover. So every service, so we'll see what is that service first. And we'll see what is that service in AWS. And we'll see what is the name of the service in Azure. And we'll recall if what we have done in AWS, and then we will go to the Azure part. About hub and spoke architecture. No, we are not going to discuss about it. So you can just ping me, or you can just send a particular, like if you require something, you can just send it to the mentor. Like if time permits, I'll just give you a glance on it, or I'll discuss an overview on it. Okay. Clear, Mohan? Hope you're clear. Yeah. So these are all the services. So the story behind why we are covering these services and why we added this multi-cloud, and why we covered AWS and why we covered Azure is, see, these are all the common services that in every cloud technology people will use in the organizations, right? So whenever you are adding a resume with AWS or with AWS plus DevOps, adding to that, if you put these services in your resumes, so That will be a great. So project, we are working with the DevOps. We are deploying the Terraform templates with the Jenkins. Okay. And we will try to migrate any of a database from GCP to Azure or something. Clear? Clear, everyone? Now, let's go back. Let's put this aside. Hope everyone is clear. So if any questions, you can put it in the chat box and ask your question politely. So don't assume that you knows everything and just putting some unnecessary messages in the chat box. If you have any questions, always put your message in the chat box. I'm here to help you. Okay. Going back. So in the previous class, we discussed about tenant, subscriptions, and resource groups. So is there anyone who just joined today's session, who missed the previous session, and if this is the first session, can you put some message in the chat box? Is this your first session for anyone? If anyone, if it is the first session, can you just, yeah, Harish, is it is the first session for you? Okay. Any others? Any others like they joined like this is the first session? Rest of all joined the previous session? Everyone? Rest of all are joined the previous session, right? You listened about. So, okay, Shankar is also for first. Okay. Any others? Any others? So I'll just repeat it like, if anyone is there who joined today, so I'll just repeat this tenant subscriptions and resource groups once. Is there anyone, guys? Is there anyone? Okay, great. So tenant is like owner of an account. So the hierarchy always starts from the tenant. So subscription. So inside the account, we have multiple subscriptions, and each and every subscription will have separate billing. And inside the subscription, you can maintain multiple resource groups, and all the created resources, you can group it, and that is called a resource group. For example, in organizations, even in my organization, when I create, like we have Azure account, and when we are maintaining a different applications within the same account, we will have a separate subscription for each and every account. Okay, and the billing will be calculated for that particular subscription. Since we created an Azure account, we will get one particular subscription, one free subscription. In this subscription, we have around 16,700 rupees credits. So whatever we create to practice, so everything will be fall under this particular subscription, and the amount will be debited from this particular subscription. The amount will be debited from this subscription, 16,700. So you can use this 16,700 credits in our free trial. If you want to create a new subscription, you have to enable the pay as you go model. So because we don't want to pay anything, so that we are not going to create any new subscription, we will just play in this particular subscription itself. And resource group, it's just a grouping of resources. It will be helpful for many of the use cases. One is whatever you create, if it is part of a particular resource group. So if you want to check what are the resources that you created, you can simply navigate to the resource group, and inside the resource group, you can able to see the resources that which you created, and you can delete it. Okay, generally, if there is no resource group, if we created VM, if we created database, or if we created load balance, or if you created Azure DNS or whatever it is. So what will happen is, uh, we cannot track, right? Always we cannot navigate to each and every service, and we cannot see what we created and how to delete it, where to delete it. So because of the resource group, we can always be, keep on track. Okay. So today, let's start with, again, creating of a resource group, and then we'll come back. We'll see about VM in Azure today. We'll see about VM in Azure. Let's go back. Yeah. So this is the Azure account. If someone has not seen this yesterday, so this is an Azure account, and this is the place that you can sign up. And as I said, like, subscription free trial is having a remaining rate of 16,700. And if you want to go for upgrade, you can upgrade it. You can see the top also here to upgrade it. So these are the Azure services, and left side 3 lines. If you click on this, here also you can able to see all the Azure services here. Let's say if I want to create a resource group, I can search with this resource groups, and I can create a resource group. And yeah, I'm selecting the subscription. So whenever you create a resource group, you should select the subscription, in which part of, where this resource group should be part of, in which subscription. You can select this. This is a free trial subscription that I have. So generally, in organizations, what we have is, every time for each and every subscription, we supposed to put an name based on the application that we hosted inside that subscription, like Ops1 or App 002 or whatever the names. Like, we have almost, in our organization, we have almost like 14 subscriptions or something. For each and every use case or whatever they wanted to isolate, they'll maintain a separate resource group, so they can also track the billing as well. So for each subscription level. Okay, but in our case, we are just going with a free trial subscription. Resource group, any name that you can put. Let me put it as RG1, resource group name. Okay. So people who used AWS, AWS is little kind of a modern user interface. If you see, uh, whenever you click something or whenever you create something, nothing will be again loading or processing. You can't see those type of messages in the AWS, but in Azure we able to see that. So let me put some Central India. And tags, you already know about the tags. So that is same concept. In AWS, we use the tags to identify the resource, right? So here also, to identify the resource that we create, tag is mandatory. Tag might be very small concept, but in organizations, tag is very important concept, because what the mechanism that they set up for every account, it can be AWS or it can be Azure, whatever it is, they will set up a mechanism that until unless you provide a set of tags for each organization, there will be a criteria that these tags need to be added for each and every resource that you create in the portal. Until unless you add that tags, you cannot create any resource. That is the first level of security that they'll add. And few people will allow you to create, but if you are not giving a proper tag, obviously what will happen is it will get escalated. Similarly, it also done for me as well. So in our organization, in our previous organization, the restricted, like if I'm not giving a tag, it won't allow me to create a resource. In the current organization which I'm working is, they allowed to create, but what will happen is, in each and every organization, there will be a cleanup process. Because if there is a sandbox account or if there is a UAT account, so many people will create the resources, right? So they will forget to delete it. For that reason, what they do is for every 15 days or for every 10 days, they will do a cleanup process. They will delete the resources which are not being used. So for that reason, what they do is they will look at the tags. The script will look at the tags. Okay, what are the tags were there? Created by so and so, purpose so and so, or what they do is um, exempted resource or exempted date. They'll put some dates. So if I wanted to use it for next 10 days or next 4 days, I have to calculate and I have to put that date, or I have to put a created date or something. And based on that date, it will delete a resource and it will send an email notification to the person who created that. So we will add that email in the tags as well. So the script will take the email from that tags and it will send a notification. So what I have done is I forget to give my name and email in the tags. I just simply created a resource. So in the cleaning, when it is doing a cleaning process, it is not able to find that email or some details. So that again, a single person invested their time to check who created this resource by looking at any logs and going back to the logs at what time this instance is get created, by which user it is get created, and they'll simply drop an email that this particular resource is created by so and so time, but you have not added the tags. And are we using this or are we not using it? If you are not using it, from how long that you are not using it, and why we have not deleted it? Because at end of the day, everything leads up to the bill, right? So that is the reason everything, lot of these kind of activities will be done based on the tags. So that is the reason tag is very important role. So the reason why I'm explaining this is a few of them, if you're showing some experience and if you're going to attend some interviews, so you should explain these things. So they might ask you in your organization, in your architecture, or in your environments, what are the processes that takes place, or what are the securities that takes place to protect your account or to protect the billing or whatever it is. If they ask you, you should be able to explain all this kind of scenarios so that you can easily, they can easily think that you had some experience, not just explaining about a load balance or not just explaining about an auto scaling. You all need to know about this as well. Okay. So for time being, I'm just giving it as created by uh, Santosh. Okay. So now click on next and validation is passed. I'm going to click on create. So this is how the resource group will get created. This is how the resource group will get created. Understood? So let's go back to the whiteboard again. And we have seen about a resource group now. And now we'll talk about virtual machines. Let me add this here. Okay. Virtual machines. So yeah. So the concept virtual machines in AWS, we will call it as a EC2. And instead of calling it as a virtual machine, in AWS, we call it as a instance. And the process of creating of virtual machine is same. We will select the operating system, we will select the RAM and CPU, and we will select the network, in which network this particular virtual machine should be get created, and security group. Everything is same. But people are new to cloud. So what is a virtual machine generally? A machine that which you created is not physically with you, and it is located at somewhere. It is located at somewhere and you are using it. That is called a physical machine. Let's say I have a computer in front of me. I'm teaching the class now. This is a physical machine. Let's say remotely, if you are accessing to my machine, then in your case, it is a virtual machine for you. And in my case, this is a physical machine for me. So that is what happening in the cloud as well, right? So all your laptops in front of you is nothing but a physical machines. And if a machine is located at somewhere, if a machine is located at somewhere, and remotely if you are accessing to that particular machine, so that is nothing but virtual machines. Okay. So in Azure, we can create these virtual machines and we can log into these virtual machines. Same like as AWS, you can create a Windows machine, you can create a uh, whatever the Linux machine, you can create anything. Okay. So along with these virtual machines, like what about the cost? How will you pay this? So in AWS, if you remember, we have on demand, we have spot, we have reserved, right? Here also, we also have on demand instances, reserved instances, and the spot VMs as well. But there we call it as an instances, and here we calling it as a VMs. That is nothing more than that. Okay. So we have the reserved VMs, we have the spot VMs, we have the on-demand VMs. So let's go back and create one virtual machine in Azure. Simply, left side you can see this. This is a virtual machine. This is a virtual machine. And if you click on Azure virtual machine and just click on create. Yeah. So here you can see this first step. Subscription. Whenever you create a virtual machine, you should think that in which subscription and in which resource group it should be part of. Even in the organizations also, you should always think about these two. In which subscription that you want to create and in which resource group that you want to create. I want to create in a free trial subscription and I wanted to create in a resource group 1. Select this. Yeah. Okay. And see, it is just loading here and it will get a tick mark. Just wait. And meanwhile, give the name of a virtual machine, VM1. Yeah. So it is just verifying that whether it will take this particular name or not. So in AWS, what will happen is either it shows a red mark or while we are creating, it might show an error, but here it depends on this tick marks. And region I'm leaving, availability zone, I'm leaving it. Zone 1, I'm leaving it. And I'm leaving the Ubuntu machine. Scroll down. Size, it is loading a size. Let's wait. Let's wait. One second. So I think there is some internet. One second, guys. Yeah, so here you can see some standard and you can give the password while creating machine itself. You can give the password while creating a machine itself. One second. Let me shift to the different network, guys. Okay. So these are the VM sizes, which is nothing but an instance type. Let's click on this back. Password. So here you can see I'm creating it a free trial subscription and resource group and VM name as VM1 and in Central India in availability zone and standard D2 like 2 CPUs and 8 GB memory and password username. So username I'm giving it as Azure and password I'm giving password. So I've given the password and I'm retyping the password again. Then scroll down and click on next. So the next step would be disks here. And so you can see the disk size, disk type, and delete with the VM. So SSD disk is adding here, and 30 GB of disk is adding, and this disk will be get deleted automatically when we delete the VM. If I go to the networking, here, so generally in AWS, what we have, it will have one default VPC, and we will use the default VPC and the subnet, right? Here, what it is doing is it is creating a new VPC. So we'll talk about this later. It is creating a new VPC, a new subnet, and one new public IP is getting created here. Okay. So security group, leave that, and inbound ports 22 is getting allowed, and delete the public IP when we delete the VM and scroll down. And I'm not going to add it any of the load balancing. So I'm repeating this again. It is creating a new VPC here and a new subnet here and a new public IP here and a security group. In that security group, port number 22 is getting allowed. And just click on review and create. So review and create. So basic step we have seen, disk step we have seen, network step we have seen. So monitoring management, we skipped that and we came to the review plus create. Wait. Okay. Validation is failed. Let's see what validation is failed in the basics. Acquired information is missing. Which information is missing here? Scroll down, scroll down. We have added the port, we have added the password. Okay. So it is asking to change the region. Let's try to change into another region. Let's select this and review and create. So generally it will not take this much of time because of my network is slow. It is taking just few more seconds, right? So just wait for a couple of seconds. Yeah. So the validations, it is running a final validation now. So final validation is also done. Scroll down and just click on create. So you can see the top left side message here and the validation is passed. And these are all the details that we have given. So new virtual network, new subnet, new IP address, and delete the public IP when the VM is deleted. And the VM is getting created now. Second, guys, I tried to shift the network. This is also. Sorry for this, guys. So the network is very bad today because I came to my hometown. So that is the reason I think I connected to the hotspot. Okay, just networking basics. Resource group 1. Password Azure 𝐶NGH@122 𝐷HOSH@123. Scroll down, disks, leave these details, delete and review and create. So let me put this in East US, review and create. So now it is running the final validation again. Okay, click on create. Validation is passed. I just clicked on create now. The internet is too bad today, so that is the reason it is taking more time, or else it won't take this much of time. It just take 30 seconds or 40 seconds to create a virtual machine. So it's okay, no problem. So these are the steps that we have to create a virtual machine. So maybe the next class will be on Monday, right? So by Monday, so I'll be having a good internet. So I'll be traveling back to Hyderabad, or I'll be connecting to the any other Wi-Fi. So today I was connected to the hotspot. So that is the reason that, it is taking more time to create a virtual machine. So here you can see the validation is passed. So once after create a virtual machine, so in the next class, I'll show you how to log into the virtual machine and how to connect to the Windows machine, and networking steps and all, how to create a VNet, so how to create a subnets and all. So for today, just bear this. So I had a network issue, so that is the reason I couldn't able to show how to log into the virtual machine. So let's go back and let's recap what we have covered. So the first step is basic step. So in this basic step, so we have to select the VM name and instance type, and the most important, in which subscription that you should create your VM, and the resource group, in which resource group that you need to create your VM. And you have to, there are two ways of authentication. Generally in AWS EC2 instance, you'll create an instance, you will log into the instance with the default username and password. And then if you want to set up any particular password, you have to set up, or using of a user data, you can able to set up a password. But here, in the basic step itself, you can able to set up the username and password as well. Username and password as well. So with this username and password, you can able to log into the machine. Yep. So you can see this here. The deployment is in progress. So the VM is getting created here. So generally, to show this particular deployment progress, it takes just only hardly 40 seconds or something. But because of the internet issue, it took more time to create this particular instance, and you can see the deployment process here. Okay. So after that, disks, you are not modifying anything. So by default, it is getting 30 GB for that particular VM. And there is a important step about VNet. Here, by default, it is creating a new VNet. By default, it is creating a new VNet and public IP. And you're deleting this public IP automatically when you delete VM. When we delete VM. And you created the VM. So this is so the VM creation is successful. So the loading, the page loading is also taking more time today. So because of the network issue, so you can see the VM which we created. So I'm going back to the VM's page. So we have seen about today, what are the topics that we are going to discuss in the Azure. And we have seen about what is a tenant, what is a subscription, what is a resource group. And you can see the virtual machines here. Today, because of this internet issue, we have not logged into the machine. So it is taking more time to load the page. But we have seen about these steps. In the basic step, what we are giving the name of the instance, we are giving the authentication, we are giving the instance type, we are giving the availability zone, we are giving the subscription, we are giving the resource group, and then disk, automatically a 30 GB disk is getting added, automatically a new VNet is getting created, and automatically the IP which is creating will automatically delete when we delete the VM. And we have created the VM. So this is the VM that we create. So if you click on this VM, it opens all the public IP, private IP, whatever we have. So you can see the public IP address here, and one disk is there here, and the Linux operating system is there, and the resource group that which we created, and the free trial subscription that we used, or the instance that we created in this free trial subscription. Okay. So to log into the machine, how to log into the machine and all. So don't worry about it. So again, it takes more time to load the page and all. So I'll be showing it in the next class. But in today's class, we have seen the topics which we are going to cover, and at the same time, how to create a VM. I've not shown you how to log into the VM. I'll be showing it into the next class. Clear, everyone? Any questions from anyone? Any questions, guys? Any questions from anyone? Yes or no, please? So due to this internet issue, I have not shown you how to log into the machine, so I'll show it tomorrow. Bhavani, Srikanth, Funny, Satish, Tarun. Any doubts? Any doubts from anyone? Are you clear, guys? Vasavi? Okay. Fine, then thanks for joining. So yeah, so next class I'll try to be, connect to the good Wi-Fi. So maybe because of this hotspot, we faced issue today. We have not logged into the machine, but see, you can see this screen. So when I clicked on VM, it is taking more time to open it. But yeah, so we'll log into the machine in the next class. Okay. So hope you listened to this yesterday session and today's session. Yesterday we have covered the same thing like subscriptions, resource group, little bit more time. Today we have seen the topics that we covered, like we are going to cover, and we have seen the creating of a virtual machine. Okay. See you on Monday again. So thanks for joining. Any question you can ask, you can stay back and you can